The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Good evening and welcome to our very first live-streamed Advent Festival of Carols and Scriptures from the Basilica Cathedral Parish of St. John the Baptist in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. It is fitting that we begin our festival with Psalm 23, which is ripe with words of comfort and hope. Last year, on the first Sunday of Advent, our full 45-voice choir gathered here in the sanctuary, as we had done for the previous 23 years, to sing our Advent songs of praise and longing, and hear again the hope-filled words of the Advent readings. Our parishioners and friends who had been such a vital part of our celebration filled our pews. And afterwards we gathered, we hugged, we stood close together, and we shared tea and cookies and Christmas cake. But now we are living in a pandemic world where the COVID-19 virus has turned our world upside down, and our old reality has given way to a very new here and now. Our festival tonight reflects that reality. Our gathering is limited. Our full choir is COVID isolated. Our singers tonight are our faithful cantors who have sung at all our live-streamed masses since the start of the COVID-19 shutdown. So tonight, there'll be no hugs, there'll be no tea, no Christmas cake, but here we are. In these uncertain times, we need to believe and cling to the hope that our Advent God, our Shepherd God, walks with us, bringing shelter, hope, and light to our darkness.
Death stalks my path with stealthy steps from day to day. I cannot find your peaceful place, but dwell in dreary darkness, longing for your face. Oh, shelter me. Oh, shelter me. The way ahead is dark and difficult to see. Oh, shelter me. Oh, shelter me. All will be well if only you will shelter me. I will look back in days to come and realize your faithfulness has led me home. Within your house I'll find my peace, trusting that in your mercy you have sheltered me. Oh, shelter me. Oh, shelter me. The way ahead is dark and difficult to see. Oh, shelter me. Oh, shelter me. All will be well if only you will shelter me. All will be well if only you will shelter me.
The prophet Isaiah writes, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, and to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. He has sent me to tell those who mourn that the time of the Lord's favor has come. To all who mourn in Israel, the Lord will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness, they will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his own glory. They will rebuild the ancient ruins, repairing cities destroyed long ago. They will revive them, though they have been deserted for many generations."
Throughout these fearful days, we hear time and time again, where is God in all this? We have just heard the prophet Isaiah telling us that he has been anointed by God to bring the good news to all God's people. Who are God's anointed today? Where do we see the face of God? Tonight, we acknowledge with profound gratitude and respect the healthcare and frontline workers who have given heart and soul and even their lives to care for the victims of COVID-19. Thanks to them, there were many, many patients who, when family members couldn't be with them, were comforted, consoled, and loved in their final hours. And we too are consoled that even in the barren night where love has lost its way, a word of hope is spoken to the world. Those same essential care workers, God's anointed presence, remind us that God continues to be our companion on our pandemic journey.
When the winter's darkness casts its gloom upon the earth, and summer's sun has gone to sleep, even in this barren night where love has lost its way,
the word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord."
For the Israelites, the house of the Lord was Jerusalem, and their return after their long exile was cause for great joy and gratitude. What or where is the house of the Lord for our pandemic world? Whenever family and friends reach out to those feeling alone and abandoned, wherever people work toward international peace and stability, wherever human beings give aid and comfort and hope, and where that comfort and hope becomes the face of our Advent God, that is where we find the house of the Lord.
I rejoiced when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." At last our feet are standing unto gates Jerusalem. I rejoiced when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." At last our feet are standing unto gates Jerusalem. Jerusalem built as a city with compact unity. rejoiced when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. At last our feet are standing at your gates, Jerusalem. For the sake of my family and friends, I will say, peace be with you. For love of the house of God, I will pray for your good. I rejoiced when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. At last our feet are standing at your gate, Jerusalem.
In chapter 51, Isaiah says, listen to me, O my people, and give ear to me, O my nation. For a law will go forth from me, and I will set my justice as a light for the peoples. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not wane. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, a people in whose heart is my law. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation to all generations.
We often think of prophets as people who, like Isaiah, lived in biblical times. But prophets have arisen throughout the centuries with messages of comfort, warning, inspiration, and hope. In 2020, there emerged new and urgent prophets who sounded the alarm that a global pandemic was upon us. Government leaders, scientists, researchers, doctors whose directives were, by necessity, severe and restrictive. Often their messages were met and are still being met with anger and resentment. But the virus compelled us to listen to the cry of our earth, which has been so grievously wounded by human recklessness. With whole countries and industries in lockdown, many areas saw blue skies and clear waters for the first time in decades. And in those lands, Mother Earth was allowed to breathe again, and her response was immediate and bountiful. In this Advent season, as we listen to the voices of the prophets of today, may we find hope in the promise of a renewed post-pandemic world. If we listen closely, we can hear the voice of our Advent God who says to us, listen, my people, your hopes are answered. Your hopes are answered.
to cast off their cloak of fear and to walk upon this earth. God is so near. Listen, my people, your hopes are answered. Listen and hear my voice. Your hopes are answered. Your hopes are answered.
Again, we read from Isaiah. Say to those who are of a fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away.
These beautifully poetic words from Isaiah were meant to bring comfort to the Jewish exiles who had lost their temple, their land, and their sovereignty. Isaiah proclaimed that God would not abandon them in their despair, that their sorrow would fade away and joy would be returned to their hearts. We too need to hear Isaiah's words as we are held ransom by COVID-19. We need to know that in time our exile will be over, that the isolation that has dimmed our sight to the beauty all around us will vanish, that our ears will find renewed inspiration in music, poetry, and the sounds of nature that surround us, that family and friends will be reunited, comforted, and strengthened, and joy and faith and hope in a new world will come to pass. The Lord, the Advent God of our exile, has promised it.
Can give the shadows light, can
We read in St. Luke's Gospel, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man named Joseph, and the virgin's name was Mary. He said to her, "Rejoice, O highly favored, the Lord is with you. You are to conceive and bear a son. He will be great and will be called Son of the Most High."
And we hear about the reality of Mary's lifelong commitment at the foot of the cross in the Gospel of St. John.
When the Son saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her to his own home.
Mary's prompt yes to the angel Gabriel is a model of faith for all believers. She trusted that what God said was true, and she accepted the call to become the mother of God. But this powerful woman of history is much more than a title, Mother of God. She is Mary, the unmarried mother, Mary, the homeless woman, Mary, the political refugee, Mary, the mother of a condemned criminal, Mary, woman of our time. Mary's story lives on generation after generation in the lives of countless unmarried pregnant women and in the displaced, the homeless, the marginalized. In this Advent season, we honor Mary, model of faithfulness, courage, and of hope.
The angel Gabriel from heaven came. His wings as drifted snow, his eyes as flame. From God all hail, the angel said to Mary, most highly favored lady, fear not, for you shall bear a holy child, by whom we shall to God be reconciled. His name shall be Emmanuel, the long foretold, most highly favored lady, Gloria.
We conclude our Advent festival with a reading from the prophet Baruch. Arise, O Jerusalem, stand upon the heights. Look toward the east and see your children gathered from west and east at the word of the Holy One, rejoicing that God has remembered them. For God has ordered that every high mountain and the everlasting hills be made low, and the valleys filled up to make level ground, so that Israel may walk safely in the glory of God.
The imagery in this reading from the prophet Baruch is abundant and filled with hope. The early days of 2020 taught us a huge lesson about hope. How will we ever forget that event that came to be called Snowmageddon? That blizzard that buried us under almost 80 centimeters of snow, and the ensuing state of emergency that brought activity to a grinding halt for 8 days. It was a very difficult and disorienting time. However, during Snowmageddon, something wonderful happened. We rediscovered what it is to be community. We reached out to our neighbors. We helped shovel driveways. We shopped for groceries for people who couldn't leave their homes. We baked and shared cookies and casseroles. Even our Canadian military came with their shovels and full-hearted enthusiasm. Snowmageddon was a challenging time, but throughout it all, that stubborn hope that we Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are famous for prevailed. We knew, as sure as the sun rises in the east, that eternal sign of hope and renewal, that we would get through the snow and the isolation together. We reconnected with what it is that makes us Advent people of hope. The snow eventually melted. Spring came, and our Advent God smiled.
On behalf of the parish, I would like to thank all of you for your presence here today. Especially like to thank all those who helped to plan this wonderful production this evening, this beautiful prayer. To Patty Fowler on the piano here, who is our music director of our parish and certainly of our diocese as well. So thank Patty for her leadership in this. To Mickey Pitcher, whom you've heard over here, for 24 years have written a script for this production every year for this prayer. And I'd like to thank her again for all the hard work. And to Jacinta Mackey-Graham, who has become our director here, choir director as we say in this time. So I'd like to thank Jacinta for her direction of this I guess we would call it production. To Brother Rick Fowler here for his great instrumentalist, wonderful instrumentalist, Mary Brennan on the flute, Patty, of course, on the piano, Dominic Green on the violin, and Katie Sullivan on the trumpet. Wonderful. They come here all the time and help us to make our music in the Basilica so beautiful. To our cantors, our faithful cantors who have been here since the pandemic began. To Pauline Bolas-Lannon, Sarah Broderick, you shake your head when the time comes, Donna Marie Kelly, Jacinta Mackey-Graham, Keelan O'Leary, Barbara O'Keefe, Alma Singleton, and Sheila Sloan. To our sound production down here, Peter McDonald and Ryan Hayward for his assistance. And on live stream over in Portugal, we have Brian Lake and John Fitzgerald and Nicholas Lim here locally providing you with our live stream. So thank you for your presence here, and those on live stream are watching, and we all wish you a wonderful Advent season.
Thank